Yeah, the season runs June 1st through November 30th, but if you take all the number of storms that happen, the majority of them happen in the months of August and September.
And history does repeat itself as well, that most of the most severe hurricanes come in August and September.
Sure. And if you look at the pure history, of course it's just statistics, but if you just look at the history, we're technically overdue for a hurricane in southwest Louisiana. Because if you take Ike out of the equation, because Ike really made landfall close to Galveston,
right.
The last actual hurricane was Rita in 2005. On average, this area sees a hurricane about every 5 to 6 years. So
great.
Think about that. But again, that's just numbers. There's no science behind it. It doesn't mean that, oh man, we're overdue. It's going to happen now.
Right. You need a generator. You need some gas. You need some clean drinking water.
Absolutely.
Canned food. What else would you suggest?
And on all those things, if you are going to stay, make sure you have not only a 3-day supply, but I would say a 7-day supply of all that stuff. Food, water, and of course, since you're going to be relying on generator, gasoline to run that. So a 7-day supply. And I say 7, we used to say 3, but 7 now because you think about it, especially after Rita, you know, it takes a while, especially if you're talking a major hurricane, to get all the infrastructure back up. So if you were going to stay, you need to be self-reliant for at least a week. Of course, I'm not telling you to stay and disregard orders. If there is some sort of evacuation order, you have to make your own decision on that. But if you're one of those that is going to stay, you know, make sure you're planned ahead and have everything you need. But not only that, if you are going to stay, something else to think about, you would need to know if you're in a flood zone, because you can be protected from the wind. As long as your house is well built, you're probably safe. But you can't protect yourself from floodwaters. If you're in a flood zone and a storm surge causes flooding, there's nothing you can do about that. So you need to know if you are in a flood zone or not. The best way to know that is to find out what your elevation is, where you live. That's not something you can do the day before the hurricane comes. That's one of those preparedness things you really need to do now. And that should factor into your decision of, do we stay or do we go?
So storm surges, we're outdoor guys. Rita came, the Burns were used to just known for bass fishing.
Right.
You would go over there, and now it's brackish water. I mean, it's salt water and fresh water because of the storm surge that came.
Yeah, Rita brought in that salt water and has deposited it, and that just takes a long time for that to go back to a freshwater situation. So yeah, again, flooding, that's the one thing we try to stress the most. If you know you're in a flood zone, you can't stay. You don't want to be trapped in your house by water. I remember taking phone calls during Ike from people in Lake Charles that did stay, because most everyone did stay for Ike. Right. Because you remember 2 weeks before we dealt with Gustav and all that massive evacuation for Gustav. And I remember taking phone calls from people during Ike saying, water's coming in my house. What do I do? What do I do? And, you know, that's a heart-wrenching situation to hear from, you know, my perspective, especially when you know that that's really something you should have known, that flooding was going to happen, because I would say Ike was actually very well forecasted. The forecast for that panned out pretty much as expected. So just because it's a category 2 like Ike was, don't take it for granted that, oh, it's just a category 2. It's not going to cause us problems.